Yugo is a Yugo.
It's like a time machine.
The Yugo, a car from the communist world that even won over Hollywood. It made its mark far and wide.
When I sit in a Yugo, I feel like home.
They do have a soul, like they were not just regular cars.
The Yugo, the socialist Volkswagen from Yugoslavia.
It's not the best, but it's ours. We made it.
The Yugo, a car that socialism conquered America with. Well, almost.
Communist car sold in Ronald Reagan's America. Americans have voted this car the worst car of the millennium.
The worst car in the world that became a star of Hollywood movies.
And that's where it became an icon, and a pop icon for failure.
It's boring when everything works.
The Yugo, the tragic hero of history, invented in Yugoslavia before the multi-ethnic country split into nation-states and descended into war.
Yugo united Balkan. So all 6 republics were working on the same car.
It's maybe a symbol of a country who doesn't exist anymore.
This is the story, but we need a new story. The story of Yugo will go on.
Nevin Čerić from the Serbian capital Belgrade is a die-hard fan of the solid, affordable people's car from the Balkans. For decades, he's only driven Yugos.
When I sit in a Yugo, I feel like home. We always had them in our family. When the war was in our former country, Yugoslavia, my mother put us in our Yugo that was 3 years old then, and me and my brother and my mother, we came to Serbia then. It was a war time, and we were on the wrong side of the border.
With a song that describes fleeing the Yugoslav wars of the 1990s in a Yugo, the band Zabranjeno Pušenje still fills huge concert halls today. Yugo 45, one of the most successful hits in the history of Balkan pop, is an anthem to a simply timeless car.
2024, it's like you're driving something that was first made in early 80s. So, and they were always the same. You know, there was like small changes. They were produced for 30 years, but Yugo is a Yugo.
The Zastava plant in Kragujevac had been producing Fiats since 1953. Cars like the Zastava 750, a version of the Fiat 600, were intended to make the people mobile. That was the goal of Yugoslavia, led by Josip Broz Tito from 1945. Because the communist country wanted to build a successful, independent economy, a research and development center was founded at the Zastava factory at the start of the 1970s.
We understood that the factory must be formed independently, having its own R&D. That's why our first car, Zastava 101, was created, then similar Yugo, and finally the Florida model.
The Yugo became Zastava's most successful product. In 1980, the first Yugo to roll off the production line was presented as a gift to Yugoslav President Tito in a festive state ceremony. To this day, the Yugo is a Spartan car with only 45 horsepower and a very special driving experience.
You feel tired, of course, yeah, because it's a bit noisy, but that's all the part of the experience with a Yugo. That is the point of the car. I like the feeling that you are always engaged when you drive these type of cars, because you always have to check something. Here you have to do everything manually.
But the Yugo did get a few small, luxurious details.
It's very simple inside. Here we have the back rear defroster where you can just warm up your hands if you need to push the car. You have a horn, a wheel, it works. And of course you have a lighter to light up your cigarette. And the fun fact of this car interior, it's a small car, but it has 3 ashtrays. So everybody needs to smoke.
But the heart of the Yugo is under the hood.
We have a Yugo engine, 903 cubic centimeters. Also, the transmission is also here, so you can fix it on every parking lot. It's a very cheap car, cheap to maintain.
Neven Čerić regularly takes part in outings organized by the Zastava fan club in Belgrade. Anyone who owns a car produced at the Zastava plant is welcome. The fan club members love the Balkan style of car construction.
It makes you a good driver since you don't have the ABS, you don't have the airbags, you don't have anything. So it's basically you and the car, and you need to feel it to understand it.
From the beginning, I was in love with this car.
These cars bring together all generations.
It means a lot to me because it's the same model that we had as back when I was a child. I wanted to capture, the good old feelings of nostalgia, but I wanted to make new memories with it.
It is a car that really made my life the way it is now, because me and my brother, we did some modifications and we had a great time. Also, I met my husband this way, so I always say that this is the reason why my daughter exists.
It goes without saying that using tools is part of every Yugo owner's daily life.
You needed to love them, to take good care of them in order for them to take care of you and to serve you properly.
Marko Mijalkovic from the Zastava fan club works as a tour guide for the Yugo Verse agency in Belgrade. In his Zastava 101, which was sold under the name Yugo Scala, he takes tourists on a tour of the former Yugoslavia.
Being in these cars is simply something unique that you have to experience, especially while we are driving and you're looking at those buildings that were built in communist period, in brutalism. You can simply, it's like a time machine.
A highlight of every one of Marko's tours is the Gen X Tower. The 36-story skyscraper, which opened in 1980, was one of President Tito's pet projects. He had established a communist system in Yugoslavia that was very open to the capitalist West, and also had successful trade relations with it.
I would say this is Tito's child. Tito wanted to show how big and strong we are, so he made all buildings in New Belgrade big. So this is the biggest building that you can see in Yugoslavia at that time. As this building symbolizes the Yugoslavia, it's also happening with Yugo and Zastava 101.
The Yugo has been exported to 74 countries, including the United States.
Introducing the new Yugo, a paramount engineering achievement from Yugoslavia. From busy traffic.
In 1985, Malcolm Bricklin, a Philadelphia-born entrepreneur, founded the Yugo America Company to bring the compact Yugo to market in the United States. In his book, The Rise and Fall of the Worst Car in History, American historian Jason Buick tells this exciting story.
A communist car sold in Ronald Reagan's America. That alone, the answer seems obvious. But Americans, again, had no idea where Yugoslavia was. So it wasn't the communist issue. But what drew everyone's attention to the car was the price. It was $3,990, brand new. The first Yugo advertisements, it's the Model T, the Volkswagen, and the Yugo. And it says, introducing the same old idea. The Yugo was one of those people's car that we've had in our history.
Everybody needs a Yugo sometime.
I bought my Yugo because now I can afford a brand new car.
And the cars sold like hotcakes. Long lines of people formed in front of every Yugo dealership. Under $4,000, an unbeatable deal.
Like any new fad, people rush to look at it and to buy it. Maybe kind of to be the first person on their street to show their neighbors. I'm the crazy guy with this cheap car. I don't care about, consumer culture in America.
And the Yugo changed the entire U.S. automobile market. Such a small and cheap vehicle had never been for sale there before. In its first year in the U.S., the compact car from Yugoslavia sold around 40,000 units.
In the first year, the Yugo was the fastest selling European import in U.S. history. So once the Yugo entered the low end of the market and showed, the car producers around the world that there still is a market there and it may be viable, that Hyundai jumped in, Daihatsu jumped back in, Suzuki came back in. All of a sudden there was, American journalists who covered automobiles called it a race to the bottom.
But then more and more American car experts began to take a closer look at the cheap car from Yugoslavia. It became clear it couldn't always keep up with U.S. standards. And America's most important consumer organization also turned a spotlight on the Yugo.
But Consumer Reports can help you get better value.
And they reviewed the Yugo, and Consumer Reports said, don't buy the Yugo. The review alone was enough to be in the national news. The next morning, did you hear what the news said? You're at work, and then pretty soon it's on David Letterman and Jay Leno. And from there, it went from, Yugomania and consumer fad to national icon and national joke.
Jay, how do you get a Yugo to go 0 to 60 in 10 seconds?
I don't know.
Drive that off the cliff.
A Yugo did just that in the Bette Midler movie, Drowning Mona.
Think about the scumbag. As I see it, you got two options. Buy us out or pray for an early death.
And the cops in Dragnet end up with a Yugo.
After losing the two previous vehicles we had been issued, the only car the department was willing to release to us at this point was an unmarked 1987 Yugo.
In the series Moonlighting, Bruce Willis does whatever he can to get rid of the unloved car.
Rest in peace.
And in Die Hard 3, he steals a Yugo to go on a manhunt.
Let's go, come on.
And it's in The Simpsons and Cars 2.
What country is this car from?
It no longer exists, but take her for a test drive.
So you want me to stop talking to you? Right now?
You are acting strange today.
Art professor Kevin O'Callaghan based one of the most successful American exhibitions ever on the car. The Yugo as a toaster, a telephone, an accordion. He'd challenged students to reinvent this car. They also created a Yugo slot machine and a Yugo piano.
Given a Yugo as a point of departure, give it a new life other than the one it was intended to have. We called it Yugo Next, obviously referencing its next life or its next phase. And the only rule was that it just couldn't be a car anymore.
She's running great. Let's jump the bridge.
But we're in a Yugo.
But while the Yugo became a media star, its sales plummeted. That was partly due to developments back home in Yugoslavia. With his strong personality, President Tito had always managed to unite the different peoples and religions in the country. But after his death in 1980, more and more tensions and conflicts flared in Yugoslavia, leading to war in 1991.
Yugoslavia was starting to crack. And when Serbia goes under UN sanctions, as a business, Yugo America is sanctioned. And that was really the end. And finally, in 1999, NATO bombed the Yugo plant, the Zastava plant. It was an arms manufacturer. And so, this is like the final crescendo of my Yugo opera. Can you have a Yugo without Yugoslavia? And the answer was no.
The country split into 6 separate nations. The employees of the Zastava factory fought to continue producing a small series in newly independent Serbia, But on November 11th, 2008, the last Yugo rolled off the production line. The end of an illustrious chapter in European automobile history, with 800,000 Yugos built over almost 30 years.
How did we feel on this date exactly 16 years ago? The answer would be very sad and very emotional.
But even if Yugos are no longer being built, they're more alive than ever in art and culture. Actress and comedian Anna Maria Stojic wants to produce a TV series based on Jason Vujić's book.
I was born in a country that doesn't exist anymore. It was called Yugoslavia. It was discontinued.
She's fascinating. You know, the Yugo to her represents a lost family past, a country she's never known.
Swiss stage designer Isabel Kaiser, whose mother was from Bosnia, conceived the multimedia project Yugo Taxi with a similar motivation. For 2 years, she and her husband toured Germany and Switzerland in a Yugo Scala and documented encounters with people from the former Yugoslavia.
We made some interviews also in the car. So a lot of persons from ex-Yugoslavia who sit in the car, they react really fast. They had immediately emotions.
That's what the Yugoslavian New Wave sounded like in the early 80s, at the time when the car was built. And that was, if you like, the soundtrack to my youth. I was tall, blonde and handsome back then, when I was a teenager in the 80s.
For me, the issue, that the theme was interesting because I was born in a GDR, in East Germany, and Yugoslavia was always like a dream place where always the sun is shining, and this car, this Zastava, some people in the GDR had this car. We had a Trabi. Every time when we had when we were driving with the car, the Trabi, I was sick because the smell of the petrol was really strong, and the Zastava was like a Western car.
No airbags, but 3 ashtrays, 1 in the front, 2 in the back. Every journey is a new adventure for me. This was my very first car in the former Yugoslavia, given to me by my father for my 18th birthday.
It was really overlapped this Yugoslavian topic for me because it was the war in the 90s. Then I was a child and I just had these really dark pictures. And even my family, maybe they didn't spoke so much about their past in Yugoslavia. I didn't know that it was really a modern, nice country. And this, I think, this light went up after the project. I have also a feeling how it could be before the war wars.
The Austrian-Macedonian musician Yugo Urdens brought the Yugo back to life in a 2018 rap song. And a Slovenian artist collective traveled from Europe to the US with a Yugo for a very special performance.
It's definitely more than a car, I would say. It's not only a car, but it's a story, it's an idea, it's a symbol of not only of some times, but also some like kind of this clash of socialism and capitalism on one side, on the other side of these big dreams and collapse. Yeah, maybe some contrasts.
And even in the US, the story of the worst car in the world is far from over.
Can we bring this car again and see how people react to it? Stopping with the Yugo in the middle of some street and getting the reactions from people. This was like priceless because we parked, for example, in Harlem.
Why don't they bring them back to America, man? I like them. I like the grill.
Yeah? The rims don't look fat and round. I'd rather have a Yugo than a Tesla.
Down some memories away.
Belgrade filmmaker Filip Grujic has also just returned from America. He was there filming for a movie that he hopes will shed new light on the myth of the Yugo.
Yugo being the worst in America, and I kind of wanted to explore what does that mean, you know, to be the worst? Or sometimes it's the best thing to be the worst. I think it's the best sometimes because we were going slow and not just fast. And everything today is kind of fast, rapid. Everything works, or everything is technologized. We need, I think, that touch that is not just technology-based, that it's human, because in order to not go mental and crazy, we need something that is human, and this car is human.
It's a symbol of some those older times that everybody talks about, that they were better and the people lived better and they were like more human.
The Yugo brings back memories of a time when everyone from the Serbs to the Bosnians still celebrated together in a united Yugoslavia. And this symbol of a common Balkan identity lives on.
It's not the best, but it's ours. We made it.
We will always have an urge and need to have something that is ours. Yugo is something that is our heritage, but maybe it's time to focus on something, to make something ours again. This is the story, but we need a new story. We need something to call ours again. If it's something that resembles the Yugo, great.
So it's only fitting that the German-Serbian economist and entrepreneur Alexander Bjelic wants to bring another twist to the fate of the cult car.
I decided to purchase a brand which was Yugo, with the strong intention to bring the Yugo car back on the road, to build a new modern Yugo and to present and launch this car on the World Expo in Belgrade 2027.
The rights to the Yugo brand are in high demand. Bjelic, who teaches at Belgrade University and advises the Serbian government on economic issues, had to fight off strong competition. For example, the Croatian Mate Rimac, whose company has already taken over the luxury brand Bugatti.
Currently, the Bugatti Chiron is the fastest accelerating production car.
Mate Rimac wanted to acquire the Yugo brand and to launch a new Yugo. Already there have been some renderings of these cars, and first come, first serve. This was a longer process. I had several discussions, including the Serbian ministry, how this could work.
Will the Yugo make a comeback in the new millennium?
We are forming a group of Yugo enthusiasts, of Yugo specialists coming from the old Yugo models. We are in discussion with ex-Yugoslavian designers to prepare renderings. Dejan Hristov from Macedonia, for example, is such a candidate who has already presented some very, very interesting renderings.
Dejan Hristov has designed vehicles ranging from compact cars to convertibles. His designs for the new Yugo also include an SUV and even a van.
I find it interesting to redesign old legendary cars, to translate their aesthetics into a modern design language, and adapt them to the standards of the automotive industry of our time. I knew that the Yugo style could be used for a car that even today can look harmonious, attractive, and relatively sporty.
Alexander Bjelic is currently negotiating with European and Chinese car companies to provide the technical platform for a relaunch of the Yugo. These are new, exciting prospects for the globally networked scene of Yugo enthusiasts.
The feeling about the Yugo is alive, and this feeling we want to capture and bring it into the new Yugo. To say it in the Serbo-Croatian language, Yugo će se vozit dugo, so Yugo will be driven for a long time.
The story of Yugo will go on. It's a story that kept Yugo alive. It's not the car that kept Yugo alive, it's a story.
The Yugo, the successful product of a communist country, has won over the globe, played a role in creating a sense of identity, and radiated charm through its very flaws. The worst car in the world just keeps on going, and its story, which already reads like the script for a Hollywood movie, is far from over. What do you think? Leave us a comment, and don't forget to subscribe.